My name is Garrett. I'm one of the pastors on staff, and I want to dive right in. So you can meet me in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 if you want to read it in a good old-fashioned Bible with paper, or those ones that you have on your phone, or it's going to be on the screen as well. Here it is, 1 Corinthians chapter 3, starting in verse 5. What, after all, is Apollos, and what is Paul? Only servants, through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each his task. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. So neither the one who plants nor the one who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The one who plants and the one who waters have one purpose, and they each will be rewarded according to their own labor. For we are co-workers in God's service. You are God's field, God's building. Have you ever tried to start something new? How many of us have ever had to change our job, our career pathway? We were on one, and then we had to move and shift everything around because of circumstance or for whatever reason, and had to change our jobs. Have you ever had to switch your entire direction in life and what you were trying to do with your career and your plans? Have you ever tried integrating working out into your life? Right? You haven't been, and now you're going to start. Has anyone ever done that? Or you change your diet? Right? Nobody? I'm the only person who doesn't do this every January, New Year's Eve. Okay, gotcha. Right, and I'm going to stop eating certain things. I'm going to start eating other things, right? You're starting something new, and there's some mystery to that, and there's some fear to that. Have you ever tried starting counseling? Now, I'm not going to make you raise your hand if you're going to go see a counselor, because our culture is still very weird about like admitting that we have to see a counselor. We shouldn't be. It's a wonderful thing. But starting something new like that can be intimidating. And not just that, but sometimes you walk into a counselor's office, and for me, I think it's going to go a certain way. Like they're going to tell me all my problems, going to lay out, give me a plan. But I walk in and this person's like, so today, how do you feel? Be like, I don't want to tell you how I feel. That's why I'm here. I don't feel good. Help. Give me a plan. It can be weird to start something new. How many of you ever started trying to get a degree? Whether it's your high school diploma, whether it's undergrad work, graduate work. Some of you have gone all the way even to doctorate level, and you have all these letters after your name. Your name is so cool. You've got all those letters. I want letters. Those are cool. Starting a degree can be challenging. It can be overwhelming, and just starting something new is always crazy. Or how about relationships? If you ever had to start a new relationship, maybe you had an old group of friends, for whatever reason, no fault of your own, you've just grown distant, you've changed, and you start new friends, and that feels different to you. If you ever had to start something new, like a relationship, or you were dating someone, it didn't go the way you thought, and you're trying to maybe start dating again. Have you ever started going to a different church? Maybe that's you today. Hi, Godspeed. We're praying for you. Glad you're here. You're trying to go into a new church, and you never know if you're going to walk in and they're lighting candles or praying in languages you don't understand. You don't know what's going to happen, right? Or have you ever tried starting a new hobby? You're like, I got to change my pace because my old hobby is wearing me out. It's boring now. I need a new hobby. Or maybe you're like, I don't have any hobbies, and I don't think that's a good idea because I just work and go to sleep and eat and wash, rinse, repeat. You know what I mean? Just kind of maybe, I don't know, if you're that kind of person who has that free time and you're thinking about a hobby. I know for me, listen, I've tried to start things new in my life. I'm a true, bona fide millennial. And the reason I know that is because I once tried to start a coffee shop. And that makes me a bona fide millennial. And let me tell you, I thought it was a great idea. I could be a pastor and work at a coffee shop. It would be so cool. And I just want to thank God that at the time of my life, Kevin Yoakum, who actually has a mind, he's one of our pastors on staff, actually has a mind for business to help me in that time and mentor me in that time, because I think the only reason I'm here is because of his guidance at that time. It was a mess. Nothing went the way I thought it would. For me, my vision of me running a coffee shop was going to be this awesome experience where I walk in early in the morning, it smells of rich Colombian coffee in the air, and there's all these young people, and I know their name, they know mine, I know their order, and the convergence of culture and God and faith and awesome coffee come together, and every day is like a podcast that doesn't end. And I wake up and I start this job, and it's just me going to Sam's Club 4 days a week trying to get almond milk for people. That's all it is, just almond milk. And they don't have coconut milk, so you gotta go to another store for that. wasn't good. And what I'm saying is I tried to start something and it became something so much more than I ever thought or imagined it could be. So many of us have that. And for our church, Love 928 is that for us. It's something we started, and for the last 2 years, it became more than what we ever thought it originally could be. What Love 928 is our church asking the question, what if the best way to help people follow Jesus in our community is to serve the community, to stop talking about Jesus and to go look and be like Jesus? And so for the last 2 years, we've given up a weekend of our church services, and instead of meeting here and singing about Jesus or talking about Jesus, we go and act like Jesus together. And that's what we do. We serve the community. For the last 2 years, we've given up a weekend. This year, it's on September 28th and 29th. It's just a couple weekends away. Do you see what we did there? Love 928, September 28th. Man, that's the kind of marketing you can't pay for. You know what I mean? Love 928, what it is us trying to say, we're building a bridge to people in our community and trying to tear down these barriers so many people have to God, to faith, to Jesus. And we're hoping to just love, to just show an example of the love. Why we do it, it comes actually from Jesus, something he said 2,000 years ago in an upper room in Jerusalem. It was the night of his betrayal, right when he instituted communion. And he said to his disciples in John 13, he says, "A new command I give you, love one another. As I've loved you, so you must love one another. By this," say this word with me, "everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." Jesus says, there's a quality of love in life that you've seen in me. And I give, the way I love, the way I'm self-sacrificially loving and giving to you, the way I have this unfailing love towards you, if you do that as well to one another, everyone will know you're about what I'm about. You won't even have to declare it or tell them. They'll know it because of your love. And that's why we love 928, because we want to see a community who understands that same love. And so Jesus planted a seed. I kind of wonder in my own brain, I know Jesus was like God and he had access to infinite knowledge and whatnot, but I can't help but wonder if when he's in that upper room 2,000 years ago, when he said those phrases, did he ever imagine that for a church in Flagstaff, Arizona, it would become the directive, the direction for trying to bless an entire community? I can't help but wonder if even his imagination in that way was limited, because how could you ever? All he did was planted a seed and he let God use it. I want to tell you another story. 2,500 years ago, in a place called Persia. Everyone say the name Persia. Y'all sound like a bunch of kittens. Persia. That was the worst joke, and I loved it so much. It was like 6th grade and under level, that joke. That was so good. Yeah, Persia. In the land of Persia, 2,500 years ago, there is this crazy, awesome Bible story that you got to go read it for yourself later. It's so good. However, there's no Christian movie company or homeschool curriculum that ever will get it right, because it's rated R. Like, this book would never as a movie translate. It's absolutely rated R. It's insane. I'll begin to explain it to you, but just brace yourselves. It's R rated. The fact that it's in your Bible is just mind-numbingly awesome. I just love it. This book is about what happens in Persia when the Jews have been captured there for a long time. They've been released. They're making their way back home, but some of them are stuck in Persia still. Economically, socially, they're stuck. And in this land, there's a king named Xerxes. Everyone say the name Xerxes. If you have like a new dog or a cat at home and you don't know what to name it, man, Xerxes, right? Like, Xerxes, stop peeing on the carpet. Like, that's just cool. Your friends are gonna think you're so cool. Like, Xerxes, huh? Cool. Anyways, King Xerxes, like all good kings, has a queen. And one time they're at a banquet at a party like royalty does, and there's a lot of wine going around. And you know what wine does to us, right? Oh, now y'all got real quiet. Now listen, y'all acting like, oh no, I don't know, wine, what are you talking about? Is that red stuff? I don't know what that is. Yeah, don't act like, just because you at church, act like you better than me up on his stage. I know, y'all know what wine is. So anyways, they're at a banquet and the queen has had a bit too much of the Chardonnay. And I don't know if anyone can relate with this, but she starts talking a little too much. Do I have any wine talkers in the room? Don't raise your hand, you're at church, right? but you have a little too much wine, you begin to say things you shouldn't, and she says some things so divisive, so mean about the king that he has her killed. He's like, I guess when you're a king 2,500 years ago, that's the kind of thing you can do, just another day in the office for him. And so he kills her. So now he needs a new queen. And of course, they need a Persian woman to be the queen. So he starts getting all these people together, these women together, lining them up saying, who are the most beautiful women in Persia to be the queen to the king Xerxes? Now, this is when we are introduced to two characters. One, Mordecai. Mordecai is an unsexy, uninteresting Jewish man. He's just a good dude. And he, for whatever reason, we don't know the circumstances, we don't have the context as to why, but he decides to mentor and kind of raise and adopt his niece, Esther. Esther is this young, beautiful woman. She's so stunningly beautiful, the kind of woman that makes all the shopping carts run into each other at the grocery store. Like, she is beautiful, and he knows it, and I don't know why, no one really knows why, but they have this unique relationship. He's decided to care for her like a father, to mentor her, to guide her. And they hear about this situation. He says, what if you were to go and try out for being the queen? The problem is she's a Hebrew. She's Jewish. She can't be the queen. But sure enough, through their planning together, she ends up amongst the women, and the king loves her more than any of the other women, not knowing that she's Jewish this whole time. And he marries her, and she becomes the queen in Persia. And the reason that's interesting is because you have Mordecai and her, and they have this connection. He's not even allowed in the palace because he's Jewish. But nonetheless, they continue to communicate to each other and stay close because Mordecai and her, he loves her. He's trying to give her something. And by the way, this is what's interesting. What Mordecai does for this young girl is he just gives her belonging and purpose. He just gives her some belonging and purpose. And you can read counseling book after counseling book, and they all tell you the same thing. All of us are longing for that. The younger you are, especially. And maybe one of the reasons in our time today, in our generation, the younger generation in front of us, maybe one of the reasons we're so anxiety-ridden and we're so stressed and we're contemplating suicide so often is because no one is communicating to us belonging and purpose. Some of us in this room, you have kids, you have grandkids, you have family. I want to ask you, are you communicating belonging? Are you communicating purpose? Or are you just all about the rules and obedience and achievement? And then we wonder why everyone's so stressed. This man, this Jewish, uninteresting Jewish man, just decides to be good to a young lady, to give her belonging and purpose. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. One day, Mordecai is outside of the palace gates, and he overhears of a plot to destroy King Xerxes. He overhears this. He tells everyone involved, he kind of communicates through Esther, and they squelch the little insurrection, and everything goes well. The king is so busy, he doesn't even hear about it. You know, his Twitter feed lately is just blowing up. So King Xerxes doesn't hear about it. He just is saved, and no one tells him. Meanwhile, something else is happening. There's a villain in this story. His name is Haman. Everyone say the name Haman. Haman is this bad man who absolutely hates the Hebrews, and he believes it's his mission in life to destroy them and wipe them off the face of the earth. And so he decides to take the king, King Xerxes, and he says, hey, king, let's get some wine. There's a theme in this book. And we're going to talk. And he basically says, hey, I got a plan. What if we just wiped out the Jews? Wouldn't that be great? And they agree to it. And so they come out with a plan, and the queen, Esther, hears about this and begins to scheme with Mordecai. Because how are they going to stop this? They've got to figure this out. All of her people will be wiped off the face of the earth. And her and Mordecai speak, and there's this beautiful moment in chapter 4 where they have this conversation. You can see it, Esther 4, and it starts saying this. When Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, that you alone of all the Jews will escape. He's trying to tell her, hey, just because you're hidden and they don't know you're Hebrew right now, does not mean you're safe. They will find you out eventually. For if you remain silent at this time, I'm sure relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your family, your father's family, will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this epic line. Now, here's what's interesting about the book of Esther. It's only a few chapters long, easy to read. You've got to read it later. God is never mentioned once in this book. Not once. But you can see him all over this sentence, can you? If you know how to read it, if you know how to see the Bible, And he says, who knows? For such a time as this, maybe that's why, Esther, things worked out like this. Maybe you and I are in this unique mentorship relationship. Maybe you're a queen for a reason. And so Esther comes up with a plan. She says, I'm going to throw a banquet. I'm going to have King Xerxes there, and I'm going to have Haman there, that evil villain. And I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to get them some wine. There's a theme in this book. And she's going to get them some wine. And so she gets them together. And you know how these parties go, like, I love you so much. You're my favorite. And they're talking. And she goes, guys, you got to come back. I'm going to throw another banquet tomorrow night. And I'm going to tell you a crazy secret. It's going to blow your mind. And they're like, we got to come back, bro. So they come back, more wine. There's a theme. And she tells them, I'm a Hebrew. And the king cannot, he is stunned, he is shocked because the king loves her. But he knows that he's made a decision as a king to destroy them all. Haman becomes furious. Haman knows that crazy Mordecai guy must be behind this. You know why? Because Haman was the one originally behind the plot to destroy the king. And so he knows, I'm going to go kill that Mordecai guy. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? He leaves the palace and he goes and creates this giant stake. This big, long pole coming out of the ground. He says, I'm going to, R-rated movie, I'm going to impale Mordecai on that stake. Now, meanwhile, Esther and the king are working it out. And they come up with the idea that I'm going to create a plan so that the Jews can defend themselves and they will have all of our reinforcements. So even though I can't undo my words as king, because, kings were basically considered gods back then. He can't undo what he said. So they give him permission. He comes with a new plan. They can defend themselves and they'll be safe. And through this planning, they begin a process of saving the Jews. Now, where the story gets really interesting is that night after the party, the king can't sleep because you know how wine works, right? Oh, come on, acting like you don't know what I'm talking about. Lord, you're all looking at me like you're at church. All right. So he can't sleep, and so he's thinking, read me something boring. He gets one of the palace officials to help him. He's like, just read me basically old news, or the old chronicles of my time as king. And as he's reading, the man tells him the story of a man named Mordecai who saved you from a plot to destroy you. And the king goes, wait, stop. What? What happened? He's like, yeah, there was this Jewish guy, and he heard about a plot to kill you, and he saved you. And he's like, really? And so he says, and they trace it back and realize Haman was behind it the whole time. And so the next day he shows up, he tricks Haman, thinks Haman's going to get honored. Instead, he brings Mordecai in on a horse and honors him. And he says, Haman, the pole with which you were going to impale Mordecai is now your pole, and we are impaling you upon it. And Haman ends up impaled on the pole meant for Mordecai. Now, at this point, the Jews get saved. No battle happens. Everything works out good. And here's the bottom line. The bottom line is this, that all of these amazing things that happened all started with a man named Mordecai who just chose to give one young lady some belonging and purpose. All he did is he started something new. And he had no idea how big it would get. He planted a seed. And he let God cause the growth. What I want to tell you today is that he had no idea that his actions were going to one day save thousands of lives and change the course of generations and a nation. And it brings up this idea. This is one of many stories you can read in the Bible. The legacy of Scripture is marked by ordinary people choosing to be a hero of the next generation. You can see it over and over again in the Bible. I mean, Jesus, he surrounds himself with 12 apostles, right? Most historians would agree now that they think James and John, the two fishermen that joined him, they were as young as 17, 18, or 19 years old. I mean, why would you begin a new religious movement with teenagers? What would you, all the puberty things, and they don't know how to handle money? Why, Jesus, come on, you're smarter than that. And yet, what history shows us, what the Bible shows us over and over again, is that the legacy of Scripture is marked by people who are going to be a hero of the next generation. That's what Scripture shows us over and over again. And that makes me want to say the problem for many of us, even those of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus, is we don't see the next generation as an opportunity. We see them as a problem to overcome. We see them as a tension to manage. We see them as something in our way. We don't see hope there. I mean, a lot of us have lots to say about the next generation. Like, did you see those clothes they were wearing the other day? And those tattoos, they always got those AirPods in. I mean, how do they know? And they're cranking their music and they're always on social media. And did you hear the vulgar things they said? Yes, it's the same vulgar things you said when you were in high school, right? It's funny to me that we look at the next generation, we have lots to say about how they should do it different, but no one's there to give belonging and purpose. Maybe one of the reasons you're so sensitive to what you're seeing is God is continually tapping you on the shoulder, saying, and you could be there to change this. You could be there to bless them, to give them life, to show them some love. One of my favorite pastors, he's out in Pasadena. His name's Albert Tate. And I heard a sermon of his recently, and he said, you show me the place where you believe God the least, and I'll show you where God's going to start in your life. And I, for one, think there's some of us who need to hear that about the next generation. Someone in this room, I know you need to hear this. You've written off your kid. You've written off your grandkid. You've written off that crazy teenager, that neighbor, that friend of your kid, that boyfriend your girlfriend is dating, and all the things, right? Like, you've written it off. You've written that young man, that young woman off, and I'm here to tell you, like you, they long for belonging and purpose. And that's either going to be a problem or a conflict for you to overcome, or it's an opportunity from God to realize you can bless and serve the next generation. Sometimes truly caring about someone is not about how it makes us feel. Sometimes truly loving someone has nothing to do with how it makes us look. It's actually about doing what's good, right, and best for someone else. Annie just was on stage and she talked about why we are now more and more caring about creation and sustainability. And you've heard us talk about all the ways we're saving money, and that's so good. We're not doing that because we're like, look, kids in the next generation, we want you to see how current with the times we are. Look, solar panels, cool. We're not doing that to look interesting. We're doing that because we think that's the best way to serve the next generation, to prepare them, to pass along a good example, and to set them up well, to do our part to not leave such an impact on the environment. Well, Chris mentioned last week, which, by the way, if you didn't hear last week's sermon, you got to go to the podcast and download it. So many amazing things are happening. He let us know about this new property that we now have as a church available to us right in front of NAU. We've never had this before. And it's an incredible opportunity, and you got to go hear all about how that happened. But we're committing to this, and it's not because we want to just look interesting or, hey, let's paint it a cool, trendy color. That'll bring them in. No, we want to plant seeds. We want to create a space where more seeds can be planted, more leaders can happen, so that the next generation can have the opportunity to follow Jesus. That's why we're doing this. That's why we're putting time and effort and money into this, because we know we need more opportunities for young people, for those who feel lost and alone and hurting and struggling at NAU and college students all around this community, to find someplace else they can connect and find belonging and purpose. Chris also mentioned last week about this idea, this vision we have of what if this property, this giant property we've been blessed with, how could we turn it into a community center and give it back to the community as a gift? What would that look like? And we're not doing that because we're trying to just stay relevant or create some interesting news in the paper. No, it's about doing all we can with all the power we have to create lasting, sustainable, positive influence on the future generations. And to do that, we're going to have to go places we've never been and try things we've never done. And I think for me personally, I love being a part of a church where the leadership and where the elders are like, man, there are these opportunities, and even though they're crazy and man, we didn't always plan for all these, we're going to do this. This is right. This is good. This is what's great. Love 928. The whole thing about Love 928 is we are a church family choosing to become a hero for our community. We want to be a hero to the next generation, like the legacy of Scripture has shown us over and over again. And we invite you to join us in that. Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on with Love 928, the places we're going to be going. We're going to 12 schools. We have sites you can serve at 12 schools, elementary, high schools, preschools, charter schools in all of the Flagstaff area and Williams and even the Indian Bible College. We're working with several foster care families and single moms. We're helping them with bunk beds, yard work, swing sets. We've got a whole thing planned at each of those sites. We're involved with every one of the shelters that's available in Flagstaff with painting, carpet, organization, anything we can do to help them at Sunshine Rescue Mission, at Hope Cottage, Flagstaff Shelter Services, Flagstaff Family Food Bank, Lifeline Ministries in Winslow. So many places for you and I to serve. We're involved with the Salvation Army, United Christian Youth Camp, Hope Pregnancy Resource Center, our senior communities, Haven Healthcare, and the Peaks. We have all these sites, and we're trying to figure out how, instead of being at church on September 28th and 29th and just showing up and getting to see how nice we look and pretend we didn't drink wine like the book of Esther and all those things, or we go out and we become Jesus and we show people the love of Jesus. See, we're not just a church that's hoping that one day younger people will slip into following Jesus. I hope they just find out online about our church. Hopefully that helps them. No, Love 928 it can be us modeling Christ to them and inviting them to serve with us. You know what Love 928 really is? It is an opportunity for you and I not just to serve and not just to go to some site in 2 weekends and do some really fun things and make some fun memories and help some families, but it's an opportunity for you and I to invite someone else of another generation with us, to make a memory with them, to remind them that they belong, that they have purpose. Love 928 is not just us trying to feel good. It's not just us trying to serve a bunch of people. It's wonderful, but we're trying to build bridges. We're trying to communicate belonging and purpose, trying to communicate love to 928. That's what we're doing. And I want you to know there are ways that you and I right now today, we can become a hero of the next generation. There's ways you and I today can become a hero of really this amazing opportunity to look at the next generation and see the opportunity God has given us and what we can do. So here's some examples of what we can do today to be a hero of the next generation. Number one, I want to ask you to pray for this opportunity we have at NAU, this new space that has been given to us. And again, please go download last week's sermon from Chris, our senior pastor. So many wonderful things to tell you about that. But here's the deal. If you're the person who's like, well, I'm really busy and I don't like doing things with people. Blah, blah, blah. If that's you, love you so much. Could you do me a solid? Would you just pray then? Okay? This requires nothing of you but to think in a direction for 5 minutes. Can you do that? Right? Would you pray? Just because we need God's help. This is not something we planned for in our budget or our leadership. It's not something we were expecting. It just came to us. Would you pray for us and how this can work and what we can do and how we can create through a lot of you, new leaders and volunteers to help us with this property at NAU. So for some of us, maybe we need to remember this verse. Who knows? But maybe we're all here for such a time as this. Maybe the reason that property came to us now and not 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 20 years ago is because you're here. Maybe, who knows, for such a time as this, we're supposed to be doing these things together. Second thing you can do is I want to encourage you to not just pray, but to give to the Love 928 special offering. The idea of this is to give more than our normal way we give, so that we have all the resources we need at each of these sites all across Northern Arizona. We don't want to have to shut down a site because we don't have enough resources. We don't want to have to show up and say, oh, do you need to bring the paint? We don't want to tell you to go buy the paint. How will you know the color, right? We want to have all of it ready for us to serve. And some of us, if you can't be there for whatever reason, Love 928 on the 28th and the 29th, which I highly doubt we can't make one of those dates work, even for a few hours. Highly doubt it. But if that's you, would you consider giving to allow us the opportunity to do that? Lastly, today, would you just sign up? Would you sign up for Love 928? Would you realize the opportunity that's in front of us? We need 500 of us to serve. 180 of you have signed up. That means we need 320 more of you to commit to being at Love 928. And I want you to think outside the box. Realize the opportunity. It's not just you sign up. You and every person you live with in that apartment crammed with teenagers, right? Every one of you who have family, neighbors, friends, coworkers, aunts and uncles, people visiting from Phoenix, whatever. Bring them with you on the 28th and 29th. Sign up to serve. Go to a site. And I want to say this to all of you who have been so great about stepping up to lead a site. Thank you. Thank you to all of you who are already modeling Christ to us by giving up so much of your time and your energy to lead a location and to help so many of us serve. So I want to tell you, if you want more info to sign up on this, you go to register.ccf.church. Please download our app. Quickest way to find out all this info. Go to the info central in the back. I will be there along with several other people. We can chat, help you, talk to you about signing up, but we need you because we want to show 928 the love of Christ. We want to invite people to become followers of Jesus, and we're not going to just do that by talking about it. We're going to do that by modeling God's love to them. Would you stand with me as we end our time? And I want us to just sing together this last song. And as we do, I want to invite you to remember something, that all of us are longing for purpose and belonging, that all of us are seeking that. And would you just take a minute and pray for someone you know in the next generation, someone in your life Let's pray for them and lift them up and realize the opportunity we have to serve with them together at Love 928.